In the Asian collection at one of our local art museums, I came across a Tibetan Thangka that inspired the research project to create this video. At first I was impressed by the condition of the intense red pigments. We all know well how fugitive reds can be. My eyes moved briefly over to the description to see its dating, and I wondered, how can something so old still have reds like it was painted yesterday? However, this detail was not going to be the one that struck me the most. I glanced over to the description again and I noticed the medium, gouache, on cotton. Years ago, I had seen some of J.M.W. Turner's sketches and paintings featuring watercolor and gouache from the 18th and 19th centuries, but I had never before considered how far back it was that gouache had been used. Seeing the Thangka began a curious quest to discover more than just information on the history of gouache. I wanted to find images of art throughout the centuries past that were created using gouache. Before gouache became the medium as we know it today, ancient Egyptians made pigments from finely ground minerals mixed with various binders like honey, eggs, and resins like gum arabic from acacia trees. These were opaque water-soluble paints, much the same as gouache is made today. Though the ancient Egyptian period predates the Kushan Empire, one of the earliest definitive examples of art with gouache-like paint that I could find to view online are these terracotta panels housed at the Met Museum dating back to the 3rd century. Opaque water-soluble paints were used during the 15th and 16th centuries in illuminated manuscripts and early Renaissance works. Back then, these paints were known as body color. Body color was well suited for achieving solid, rich colors and intricate details painted on vellum or paper. Albrecht Dürer's Young Hare and European Roller's Wing are some of the earliest and most renowned examples of using body color to increase opacity with watercolor. Throughout history, artists have drawn inspiration from one another, often copying and studying the works of master artists to inform them of their techniques. Hans Hofmann was known for making many copies of Albrecht Dürer's nature studies and often created his own work inspired by Dürer. The 16th century Flemish painter Joris Hoefnagel created exceptional illustrations of plants and animals. This example of 2 lizards is on vellum, the substrate made from animal skin. Its parchment-like surface enabled gouache and watercolors to appear vibrant and allowed for meticulous details. In the mid-17th century, Hans Simon Holzbecker was commissioned by Frederick III, Duke of Holstein and Gottorp, to create the Gottorper Codex. It contains depictions of plant life from the gardens of the Gottorp Castle, a stunning 365 pages of more than 1,000 illustrations painted with gouache. Though Jan van Kessel also painted with oils, his works like these on paper are so charming. The Met has another page like this one by Van Kessel in watercolor and gouache as well. The National Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C. has a free catalog online for an exhibition called The Flowering of Florence Botanical Art for the Medici. It shows many beautiful examples of work like these created with gouache by Giovanna Garzoni. Created for a 17th century emblem book for King Louis XIV of France, this is one gouache and gold example of the many illuminations. These were used as devices for the tapestries of the king. Joseph Guppy, an English painter who worked for Frederick, the Prince of Wales, was well known in his time for his esteemed skill in creating outstanding copies of masterworks, such as this gouache reproduction of Salvator Rosa's oil painting, Landscape with Jacob's Dream. These opulent 18th century panels were painted with gouache on silk. Previously sold as a set of 8, monograms found on the panels suggest they belong to the brother and sister-in-law of King Louis XVI of France. Maurice Quentin de la Tour incorporated gouache into some of his remarkably large and magnificent pastel portraits. I was intrigued to learn of this mixing of media, so I searched further and discovered that Edgar Degas, the Impressionist painter, also incorporated gouache with his pastel drawings sometimes. I was so impressed with the de la Tour portrait that I sought more of his works with similar techniques. Many don't specify gouache, but this piece at the Met confirms its use alongside pastels. This fan is absolutely gorgeous. It's one of many examples of gouache-painted fans from this era. This one is particularly exquisite for all of the rest of the craftsmanship that accompanies the paintings. Look at the tiny brushwork, the lines, the detail and precision of this gouache painting, and the following one by classical painter Jacob Philipp Hackert. This kind of meticulous work we would typically attribute to oil painting. Though he was well known for his landscapes in oils, he also clearly excelled at gouache painting. Peter Barbiers II painted romanticized, almost poetic oil landscapes. He also made comparable drawings and paintings in the same detail-oriented layering style using gouache. He learned from his father, who painted scenery for theaters. I was so impressed with the lighting and intricate detailing that I had to search for more examples. Happily, I found a marvelous example of his work that is housed at the Rijksmuseum. To see one of J.M.W. Toner's watercolors, especially those enhanced with gouache in person, will make an imprint on your mind that will forever be there. Of course, his works in oil are his crowning achievements, but he created many thousands of works on paper, suggesting he found it profoundly enjoyable. Turner made a series of these views of Mount Rigi from Lake Lucerne, depicting different times of day. Another is titled The Blue Rigi, and another is called The Dark Rigi. Dante Gabriel Rossetti painted The Loving Cup in 1867 in both oil and gouache. The initial version, an oil painting on panel, features Alexa Wilding as the model. Subsequently, Rossetti created a few replicas using gouache on paper and a different model, Ellen Smith. No matter what medium you use, the importance of the use of values can never be underestimated. Here's a fine example by Adolf Menzel. Look at the marvelous dark values helping the light values to stand out. Menzel created this magnificent painting in 1872. I'm in awe of the grand details in every part of this masterpiece. It is said to be created on wove paper, which is distinguished for its consistently smooth surface. The mesh mold used during its creation is finely woven. This is unlike the more textured paper of its time called laid paper, which had unmistakable chain-like laid lines. William Trost Richards commanded expert control over the seamless combination of watercolor and gouache. Producing numerous outstanding landscapes and seascapes, he used the distinctive qualities of each medium to create both ethereal and dramatic atmosphere and mood. Stunningly perfect gradated washes with watercolor, and then enhanced with opaque forms, textures, and details with gouache. The following two examples of watercolor and gouache by Thomas Moran are executed on laid paper. The paper has a ribbed texture, a characteristic of the wire mold used while forming and pressing the paper. American Impressionist painter Childe Hassam produced thousands of paintings during his career. I find it fascinating to see that his style in oils carried over to his style in watercolor and gouache paintings. This charming study of a Chinese ruby throat by John Gould shows a light application of gouache over a sketchy graphite and watercolor background. These graceful 19th century gouache-painted examples of textile and wallpaper designs show vivid, bold shapes with detailed brushwork that stand out on toned paper. Here, Henry Farney has captured the foreground textures in magnificent detail. You can almost hear and feel the broken dry grasses. Wikipedia has catalogued such a beautiful example of gouache by Katharina Klein. Sadly, I could not find a clearer example of this painting anywhere else. But we can still marvel at the splendid texture that can be accomplished with dry brushing with gouache. Here is another example of a painting by Klein combining watercolor and gouache. Gouache paint was a popular medium for the production of Art Deco posters. The flat matte colors and opacity were well suited for the bold shapes and sharp lines. Scenography sketches played a pivotal role in stage design for operas and other theatre productions. There are so many of these extraordinary scenes by Karl Krabau. It was difficult to narrow down a few favorites to share here. These works by Archibald Thornburn were probably the most exciting finds throughout all of my research for this project. I had never heard of this artist before. Soon after discovering these gorgeous examples of his work, I scoured online bookstores to track down a book that contained prints of a significant number of his paintings. Each and every one of them are absolutely breathtakingly beautiful. Here following are even more examples to enjoy as this presentation closes out. Notice amongst them some famous names. I hope seeing all of these has been as inspiring for you as it has been for me. Let me know which are your favorites and if you have ever seen other examples not shown here. As these numerous examples from the past play, imagine for a moment what we can all contribute to the future of gouache.